VIX, that has been slipping quite sharply, clearly a bearish indicator as far as markets are concerned. The Fitch news actually came out after the markets closed, so it could be taken into positive light to a limited degree according to traders and analysts, mainly because the larger agency, the S&P, still remains very cautious, and the headwind which the markets are facing right now, which is the weak rupee, has nothing to do with how Indian policies are going. It's a much larger global play. Look at JSPL among the large caps, witnessed good amount of short covering, along with some of the interesting banking counters, ICICI Bank, SBI, all of them. RIL ONGC has been supporting the market for 2 days, but on the downside, the big ones, autos remain weak. Bajaj Auto, Hero Honda, IT too is giving in now because of probably some amount of strength coming back into the market. So Infosys, TCS were weak. Net markets remained under pressure. Let's see how the Fitch thing is digested in markets tomorrow, Tanya.
Oh, of course. Let's take that forward and let's bring on board our experts this evening. Joining in is Ajay Bodke of Prabhudas Lilladher, Tushar Pradhan, who's CIO at HSBC AMC, and Chandresh Nigam of Axis AMC is here as well. Good evening, gentlemen, and thanks for taking time out for us. Ajay, I'm going to begin by asking you lots to chat about, given we had a flush of news post the bell. Let's talk about Fitch first. As you heard, Fitch has revised its outlook on India. How big a deal do you think it is? You think it will go a long way in boosting investor confidence and perhaps could even turn the tide for us?
I think the change in outlook by Fitch from negative to stable clearly is an acknowledgement of the Herculean efforts that the policymakers have put in to help revive the comatose investment cycle. We have seen around $20 billion worth of projects, especially in the oil and gas exploration side, or long pending power projects by NTPC being cleared by CCI over the last couple of months. Secondly, it's also an acknowledgement of the fact that despite the treacherous and toxic political environment, the government has been able to continue on its path of fiscal consolidation. We are seeing that the diesel price increases continuing every month, leading to reduction in subsidies. And the fact that the fiscal deficit for FY13 has come in at just 4.9% vis-a-vis even 5.2% that the budget had mentioned about, and the resolve of the government to ensure that the target for FY14 is on course, I think also sort of has been acknowledged by Fitch. So to that extent, I think it's an extremely positive signal that has come from a global rating agency, which will be taken note of by investors both domestically and foreign investors.
Right. Tushar, in the near term, do you see a sense that there could be further downside in the markets? Technically, we are already below the 200-day moving average on the key indices. Do you think there is another 5 to 10% downside left purely because of the adjustment the currency is making right now?
Yeah, clearly there is always this possibility that the market may go down further, because as we all know that the market is momentum driven. So when it takes a direction, it does go beyond the fundamentals. So while I feel quite comfortable with valuations at the moment, I think there is every chance that the market does overachieve both on the way down as well as on the way up. So I think there is enough possibility for a much weaker market in the interim from here.
Chandresh, not just trading below 200 daily moving average on the Nifty, but we've also wiped out all the gains that we managed to notch up in 2013. How much more of a downside do you see from the current levels?
So I think in the short run, I think that there's been a pretty sharp down move already. The currency seems to be holding, obviously with the intervention of the RBI. So we will have to see where it goes. And so for the short run, maybe that may not put much of a pressure. But as I said, the bigger call is, let's say, what happens over the next 3 months to global flows, not only in India, but also in the EMs. And if that were to continue to be negative, I think we will see lower levels. As I said, some of the issues which are affecting the global flows also happens to be emerging market economic, or let's say growth environment, which is turning weaker. At one level, it is positive for us because global commodities which we are in imported is better, but that impact will be seen very long term. I think short run, the markets are going to be connected, and if that money outflow continues out of EMs and let's say Asian emerging markets, we can see some more downside.
So Tushar, based on how globally and locally things have sort of moved in the last couple of weeks, are you likely to now rejig your portfolio rather drastically, or are you still betting on your core, which is private banking and niche consumer and other industrials?
Well, I think at the moment we don't see any significant reason to change our portfolio positioning because, as I said, the fluctuations really affect the interim more than the longer term. We will be waiting and watching to see whether this trend actually becomes more solidified and to see where the rupee finds its level. As was mentioned earlier, all the emerging markets have fallen in line with India versus the US dollar. If that is the case, then we are as attractive or not attractive as the other emerging markets from an investing dollar perspective. So we're not any worse off. From a more fundamental perspective, if we look at what has happened to us, I think more or less likely affects everyone else as well. A weaker commodity cycle actually is something which is actually not as good for economies such as China, for example. But for India, which is a very large importer of commodities, and it does depend a lot on how low these commodities can go, this definitely is a much better signal for us going forward. Just take a contrast to Brazil, which is a very commodity-oriented country, and in a face of continuously dropping commodity prices, the equity markets in Brazil would be a lot more challenged than, say, a market like India, which is a healthy mix of commodity producers also, as well as commodity users, which will definitely benefit with the drop in prices globally. So I think I'm not overly trying to paint a very positive picture, but I'm just trying to say that on balance, I think the attractions for India continue to remain.
Right. Ajay, Indian markets have been taking a knock almost for 8-9 days now in a row. And the way news flow has changed in the last 5-6 hours, rupee has rebounded from lows, which has improved the outlook on India. And there has been talk of some measures being taken by the government, which could also support the rupee. If we are set for a pullback, what kind of call would you take? Would it be banks, the bank Nifty or Nifty?
I think in the short term, if a bounce back were to happen, then some of the high beta names, like some of the large private sector banks, which have sort of seen a savage cut, like ICICI Bank or Axis Bank or Yes Bank, would clearly be the preferred choice from a short to medium term perspective, because we believe that although in the month of June the RBI might pause and sort of take stock of how the CAD, gold imports, etc. pan out over the short term, I think the direction in terms of interest rates is quite clear, and that it's headed southwards. The pace of rate cuts obviously will be calibrated, so I think in a medium term perspective, rate sensitives like banks, and even out there I would distinguish between the private sector banks on one side, where we would be looking at we would be weighing on the side of the private sector banks, because the bad asset problems continues to dog the public sector banking sector, and it will continue for a quarter or two. So our preferred choice would be private sector banks, as also some of the large IT vendors, IT companies like Infosys and Wipro, because of the firmer footing that the largest market for them, which is the US economy, is finding itself in. I think that will aid sort of revenue growth in the IT sector in general, and I think these two companies, in our view, the valuations are quite attractive, and we would look at buying into these companies.
Chandresh, a little broader question for you. When we started the new financial year, the assumption was that the earnings probably have bottomed out. But now, should we adjust earnings outlook after looking at the numbers? And also, do you think Q1 numbers could also be disappointing?
We think the growth is basically just, we're kind of just stabilizing at a lower level of growth between the 4.5% to 5% GDP kind of numbers. And it's unlikely that we are going to see a sharp increase in FY14, at least certainly in the first 2 quarters. As we have gone through the first quarter, we're nearing the end of the first quarter, we're actually seeing demand being much weaker than what we anticipated maybe 2 months back. So in that sense, the estimate of maybe something around high single-digit earnings growth may be at risk for the full year. So that when the numbers come out for Q1, I think that adjustment would have to be made. But still, all said and done, I think we would still be maybe in the mid-single-digit kind of number. So there might be a some kind of a downside to earnings estimates.
Ajay, let's talk about some news that was out after the bell. Sun Pharma in particular. Sun is going to pay something like $550 million to Pfizer to settle for a particular case. This is a lot more than what, most analysts were expecting. How do you expect the stock to react tomorrow?
I think the market would be taking it negatively. And I think the fact that the stock also is trading at a very high multiple, I think renders it all the more vulnerable for a news of the kind that has just come in. So I think on the whole, it would be kind of a weakish reaction that the stock would have to face, in our opinion, because of this news.
Right. Ajay, what about Apollo Tyres then? Because the $2.5 billion acquisition of Cooper Tire, which they've just announced about an hour and a half back, at these times, do you think it warranted such a large acquisition? Unless, of course, it's highly earnings accretive. What's your initial take on that acquisition?
I've not had an opportunity to look at the exact contours of the deal, but I think from what I believe, it's a 14,500 crores that the company is going to pay sort of for Cooper Tires. So I think one will have to really wait and see how the funding for this deal is going to be worked out with the company, and whether it's going to lead to a large increase in the leverage for the company, which sort of is one will have to study. And right now, I think I can't offhand offer a comment on this.
Right, that's correct, Ajay. In fact, that is a leverage buyout. Surely you can look in detail, and we'll have a chat about it later. Its time is running out right now. Gentlemen, thanks a lot for joining us on this discussion this evening. Up ahead, top drug maker Sun Pharma settled a long-pending patent dispute with Pfizer and Takeda. We'll have to shell out about $500 million. Details when we are back.
Why wait till 8 a.m. for stock calls? Start your trading days early and get the 18-hour advantage. Get the most compelling stock calls.
From buzzing stocks to chartbusters to hot picks. Stocks that will ring in the markets during the trading day.
Switch on to morning bets at 7:30 a.m. on ET Now, India's #1 English business news channel.
Life is a drive, I'm ready to go. Anywhere it takes me, this is what I know. Oh, I'll be by your side. Oh, I'll be by your side. Whatever be the way, take it with a smile. This is life with you by my side. Oh, 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 I'll be by your side.
Bristow, your journey, our passion.
New Aromas deodorant, signature fragrances for men.
Simplicity taken.
All yours, Aromas, the email, the you.
मौत के मुंह से निकाला मैंने एक नहीं हजारों ऐसे लोगों को जिन्हें तुम्हारा भगवान अपने पास बुलाना था। तुम्हारा भगवान जब लोगों को तकलीफ देता है तो वो लोग मेरे पास आते हैं और मैं उनकी तकलीफ दूर करता हूँ। So if it's God, then I'm a bloody doctor.
हे टाइगर, इस वेकेशन में कहाँ जाएंगे? अफ्रीकन सफारी, सी वर्ल्ड या ऑस्ट्रेलिया? अच्छा लगता है ना जब आपके पास चॉइस हो। इसी तरह इन्वेस्टमेंट्स की चॉइस है एसएमसी के पास। शेयर्स खरीदने हो या म्यूचुअल फंड्स, इंश्योरेंस हो या फिर गोल्ड, एसएमसी इंडिया अवार्ड विनिंग ब्रोकर जो रखे आपके निवेश का ख्याल। एसएमसी, मनी वाइज, बी वाइज।
Back to a development in the pharma space. Sun Pharma has settled a long-pending patent dispute with Pfizer for anti-acidity drug Protonix. The deal is part of a larger settlement involving Israeli drug maker Teva and Takeda. Sun Pharma will pay $550 million to Pfizer, and Ashwin Mohan joins in with more details about how the case will actually pan out and impact Sun Pharma. Ashwin, what are you gathering?
Well, Ajay, this is indeed a big